Great to have your company on Racing Pulse, and it is also great to have the company of the new CEO of Racing Victoria, Aaron Morrison. He's in studio. If you want to ask him a question, send through an SMS 0416 90 50 52. Aaron, great to see you, and congratulations. It's been a long process, and finally the decision was made.
It has, Michael, and it's great to be back again. I'm absolutely wrapped, raring to go. Want to ping the lids and make every post a winner, to use the racing parlance. But very excited, very grateful to the board for their support of me, very grateful to the team, and very grateful to all of the stakeholders who've also been tremendous support over the last couple of weeks and months. And I'm really looking forward to repaying their faith and getting down to business, getting on with it.
I think the advantage that you've got as someone who's worked at Racing Victoria for so long in the senior roles that you have, and as interim CEO, is that you've probably already started with those relationships. And I know you spoke about that the last time you came in the studio, about that being probably your number one focus, as repairing some of those, I suppose, stressed relationships within the stakeholders. And the response, we saw a statement from Trower. Jonathan Munns hasn't been backwards in coming forwards, that he wants a clean out, and he supported your appointment, as have other industry stakeholders. So that must make you feel that you're doing something right already.
No, I absolutely appreciate the support, and you're right, that's been really important. We haven't done well in terms of our engagement and collaboration with the industry in the past, and I think I've spent a lot of time just getting out there and listening to people, understanding their key issues, giving them some time and showing some respect, acknowledging the great contributions that they're all making. That's what we're here for at Racing Victoria, really, is to look after the participants and the industry and the people who invest money into the industry. That's my absolute priority going forwards.
So can you see a more unified Victorian racing vision in the future?
I can absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think we'll do some things to improve that communication and collaboration straight off the bat. You know, I've spoken about setting up some industry forums so that we can start getting, better feedback from the collective experience that exists out there in the racing industry. It would be silly not to take advantage of that, right? And we can take advantage of that and help inform some of the decisions that we make about a number of things, whether that be racing aspects or otherwise.
It's imperative from a Victorian point of view that we all work together, but the wider view is from a national point of view, and we've had a lot of friction between New South Wales and Victoria. Did you get a text message from anyone in New South Wales after the announcement?
Look, I did, Michael, and you're referring to Peter V'landys, of course, and Peter and I have actually established quite a good relationship over the last couple of weeks and months. I'm heading to Racing Australia board meeting right after this, but we've absolutely improved that relationship, and we're working together on a number of important things at a national level. We're trying to get the Racing Australia aspect up and running again. We've spent a lot of time working together on the patent committee guidelines. We're trying to re-establish those, which I think is really important, from a national perspective.
Do you think we could have some movement there?
I do think we can. That'll be a hot topic of conversation today, and I think we're making some really, really good progress, not just with New South Wales, but obviously the other jurisdictions around Australia. And we need to, right? We need to recognise that there are races that need to be given their proper status, and we want to be able to get on with restoring a proper pattern of racing again. And then beyond that, there are a number of other issues of national significance that we need an effective RA to be able to represent. We need them to advocate for important things like, pushing back against some of the regulation that's coming down the line, threatening wagering, which will impact on racing. Things like immigration, addressing the skill shortages, all of those things are really important.
Previously, a major stumbling block from New South Wales' point of view has been getting that Group 1 status for the Everest. Is that something that Racing Victoria is now open to?
I think it would be fair to say that it certainly meets the criteria for a Group 1 race, just as something like the All-Star Mile would. Right? And I think there's got to be some give and take and some common sense. And I think that race probably does deserve Group 1 status, as does the All-Star Mile, and there'll be some other changes. And we should then just get on with life again and work around that. And I think it deserves the opportunity.
What's the most important thing you're going to focus on in the near future now that you are the new CEO?
Yeah, so I think organisationally I've got a few important priorities, right? I think it's fair to say, Racing Victoria needs to play its role in evolving and adapting, and I've got to get on with a couple of near-term priorities around reviewing the structure of the Racing Victoria businesses, and that includes the media businesses that we own as well. And I want to undertake a review of the structure of those businesses, the governance arrangements, the decision-making processes, and we've got to streamline and simplify all of that. And I think we've got an opportunity to better maximise how we leverage those assets for the benefit of racing going forward. So that's part, of that process. Equally, I think we need to review top to bottom all of the roles that we have at Racing Victoria, including operational facing roles, and that process has started already, and there'll be some changes that will emerge very shortly, and we need to bring in some fresh experience, capability. We need to make sure we got the right people in the right roles, and come in with a positive attitude to change and grow Victorian racing. So
obviously finance is the number one issue as far as pretty much every organisation, not just racing, every business at the moment with the state of affairs in Victoria, probably more so in racing because our funding is diminishing from the wagering turnover. So when you say looking at restructuring and organisational things from a Racing Victoria point of view, is that streamlining and trying to run more lean?
It is, and then ultimately taking some costs out of the business where we can. Because what we're trying to do is maximise the amount of money that we can continue to invest back into returning to participants, and things like prize money and bonuses. And that's our number one focus for us at the moment. In a declining wagering market, we've got to do some things to cut our cloth accordingly, and that allows us to hopefully hold prize money constant at least year on year in the face of, as you say, a pretty rapidly declining wagering market.
I was going to say, can you guarantee there'll be no prize money cuts?
Well, we'll be announcing something imminently, but that's the target. We're hoping to hold prize money returns the same on a year-on-year basis, noting, of course, that over the last 8 years we've grown prize money by something like $140, $150 million. So it's 80 to 90% growth in 8 years. That was enabled by a more healthy wagering environment for a period of that time. That's softened, and obviously we've got to adjust our business accordingly, but that's the priority, is to keep returns to participants constant. It's important for confidence in the Victorian racing industry. It's important to breeders. It obviously provides a direct return, and supports the livelihood of the participants, and also returns to owners.
So to put that into perspective for participants and owners and race fans out there, to keep the prize money at the current level, how much extra do you need to find because of the downturn in returns from wagering? What's the difference between what it has been in the past?
Well, we'll probably come up with some creative solutions to deliver some changes to the prize money program. So there'll be some reductions probably in some areas that will facilitate some increases in some new areas. And for example, we'd like to think we can target some more prize money to grassroots, to maidens and the like. Now, to do that, where we don't have any more money, we'll have to necessarily make some changes to other parts of the program. But we'll be discussing that very, very shortly. We'll come out with the full details of that.
You're an expert in the wagering landscape because that's where you've been dealing with in the past 7 years here at RV as Chief Financial Officer. You've been involved in a lot of the partnerships with the TAB and other corporate wagering companies as well. Where do you see it going in the future? Is the downturn I suppose, combination of a number of factors, cost of living, but the taxes as well? What needs to change to try and increase and stimulate that?
Yeah, as you say, look, there are a few things that are driving the wagering softness at the moment. The cost of living pressures can't be really helped or managed. The things that we can better manage and engage in are things like some of the regulatory pressures that are coming down the line. We've spoken previously about the federal government online review, and it looks like the latest update there is that they're proposing to introduce some bans around advertising of wagering, which will mainly be in sporting broadcasts and general broadcast.
Is there still a carve out for the the racing industry?
Yeah, we're still confident, and we're still being told at the moment that that remains the intent. So that carve-out would apply to racing content, racing platforms, racing venues and clubs. It's important, obviously, that they don't get captured by any kind of ban. And I think, the government has recognised the important symbiotic relationship between racing and wagering, right? They go hand in hand. One doesn't really exist without the other, and they know that people have a reasonable expectation of being served up wagering promotions information, when they're engaging in those platforms. So we're hopeful that that's the outcome. There's obviously a lot of debate politically. It's getting a lot of significant national media coverage, and we're actively engaged in that process to protect racing's interests.
What about for individual wagering providers, especially now with the joint venture ceasing? The difference for returns to Racing Victoria, I know when it was announced, the state government said no worse off. We've seen the Tabs pulled sponsorship from RSN. They're, from what we hear, pulling out of the sponsorship of the Form Guide in the Herald Sun, reducing tote operators as well. So is it going to be no worse off? Well,
what TAB is doing is probably different to the no worse off conversation. TAB's come out of the joint venture, so the first time in 30 years we're no longer in a joint venture partnership, and TAB is assessing their business on their own merits. We're hopeful that they'll continue to invest strongly in Victorian racing. They've invested very heavily to secure the Victorian wagering licence, and part of the change in the industry funding models sees them with a significant profit benefit from the change in the model that we hope means they reinvest back into growing Victorian racing. And we're having some conversations with Gil and his team about some of the ways they can do that.
Positive conversations?
They're positive conversations, yeah. And to be fair to everyone, the end of the JV, whilst it certainly hasn't snuck up on anyone by any means, we've known about it for a long period of time. What has happened is that there was a date, the end of the joint venture, where nearly every contract in racing expired, right? And so we've just got a mountain of commercial arrangements and contracts to work through. And so in the near term, we've sensibly agreed with Tabcorp to extend some of those arrangements at least through the spring carnival, so we don't impact on our peak period of time. So I can assure everyone we will have all the on-course service coverage that we're used to will continue all the way through to the spring, and then we'll continue to talk about what the arrangements look like after that. The same goes for some of the sponsorship commitments. We've got some media rights that we need to renew, but those conversations are really positive with Tabcorp. Yeah.
And the government support, obviously taxes are a big issue.
Yep.
The state government's essentially broke, so are you concerned that they will want to claw back more money from the racing industry?
Yeah, well, look, that's a good point, Michael. We're not immune to that. Every industry is being impacted by the position of the state government's deficit in some way, particularly industries like ours that are very heavily reliant on government support. And we are certainly on notice that future government funding is going to be more challenging, and we are going to have to cut our cloth accordingly. But in terms of the funding that we had agreed with the government, that's progressing. That will be delivered in two parts. The first part was the change to the point of consumption tax and our share of the point of consumption tax. That came in 1st of July, and that's happening now. That's a necessary part of the industry funding framework. We don't advocate for tax increases, but that was a necessary part of the framework. And the other bit was a fixed funding arrangement that was tied to the outcome of the licence, and we're just finalising the final formal details of that with the government now. We might not get the top end of the range that we wanted. We might get something less, and we'll have to adjust our business model accordingly. But we do enjoy strong funding from the government, nevertheless.
In studio with Aaron Morrison, the new Racing Victoria CEO. I'll get to a few of the SMSs which have come through. If you want to ask a question, 0416 90 50 52. Probably a more broader vision and issue is trying to bring new racing fans through the door, and people that will, the next generation, become punters and racing owners as well. How do we do that?
Yeah, I think it starts with better leveraging the tools that we've got available. Media assets. I think we've got a really good opportunity to do a much better job with those assets, and also working with our other partners to really elevate the promotion of racing. Right, I'd like to think that we can elevate the profile of racing into the mainstream. It's sort of make racing great again. I know I'm not allowed to use that slogan, but that's, I think simply put, that should be our objective when we need to be using all of the assets and partnerships at our disposal, and we can tell some really great stories. There's a lot to be positive about Victorian racing. Let's start talking about the heroes of the sport, the contributors, the importance of the industry. And so I'd like to think that, we'll have a big focus on that immediately going forwards, always on content-led approach and really leveraging those media assets and tools that we have at our disposal.
A couple of quick ones, and I'll get to the SMSs. I don't want to be late. You'll be late for this meeting with Peter Volandes there, Racing Australia. All-Star Mile, big topic. Is it going to Flemington? What's the future of the All-Star Mile?
Yeah, another one that we'll announce in conjunction with prize money. But I think, with the All-Star Mile, a couple of things I'd say. We think that the sort of the pattern with the All-Star Mile into the Australia Cup, the Queen Elizabeth, worked really well, and we'd love to make sure that we can maintain that. We would like to make sure that we retain the owner-ambassador aspect of the race that makes that unique. So that will certainly be a feature. And then we think that race should have Group 1 status, and whether that happens through the re-establishment of the Patent Committee or another way.
Is that moving the Mackay Diva?
Mackay Diva would be an option, right?
So
and therefore that would imply that the VRC is obviously the best place there. But there'll be a more official announcement about that coming, and that does relate to some of the prize money discussions as well.
Yep. Sandown, obviously been spoken about for so long. What's your personal opinion at the moment in the current economic climate? We've got huge developments undertaken, Moonee Valley, also Caulfield. Is now the right time to continue to pursue those from a financial point of view? And does Caulfield need to have Sandown sold partially or wholly to pay for that?
Well, that is really a matter for Caulfield and its members, and those members have to decide whatever happens. Racing Victoria's position is whatever is done with Sandown needs to be absolutely in the best interests of the racing industry and racing. I don't think that there's any particular rush there. There's obviously the consultation process happening this week, and the whole rezoning process is underway, and that's okay. That's a positive thing. It's really about uncovering options for the redevelopment, or whether that be in full or part, of that site. And we're happy to support that process and see what that delivers. But there won't be any decisions made, and certainly, we're very clear with the club. Whatever happens has to be in the best interests of racing.
A couple of SMSs. One saying, which is, I suppose, linked to that, has there been any decision on the parcel of land that's been purchased near the airport?
The Northwest land, as we call it, not in the near term, right? So that's an asset that we could develop in 5 years' time or 50 years' time, right? It's a valuable parcel of land, provides us with a lot of options and flexibility for what we do with that. We haven't made any decisions, but we've certainly been exploring options. In the future, that could be a fantastic world-class training facility, for example. We've got an opportunity to establish an equine, ecosystem out there in terms of, vet services, training academies, etc. All those things are sort of on the drawing board for future concepts. Yeah.
Question for the new boss. Lower end prize money needs a massive increase to keep up with costs. 10K plus a month to have a horse in work with a factory trainer, benchmark 58s. Owners can't afford to keep horses racing. Owner trainers leaving due to massive increase in costs, finding it harder to win races. How do we keep the number of horses in work to fill the schedule?
Yeah. Don't I know it? No, I'm an owner as well, and of some battling horses. And no, I understand that. And I think I said before, without sort of preempting some prize money decisions, I think we're really focused on trying to find ways to invest some prize money into grassroots and maiden opportunities as well, right? People spend a lot of money and a lot of time getting their horses just to race, and then, that first win should deliver an appropriate return.
There's another one here that says, hello guys, what does Aaron mean by restructuring media and radio and TV? Is there going to be more or less?
It's not about the scope so much. It's probably more about how we are operating those businesses and trying to find greater alignment with Racing Victoria's goals and objectives and that of the industry. I think those businesses can help us do more, and I spoke about elevating the promotion of racing. We've got a role to play there. We can do much better than we have been at the moment, I think.
Another one just on that. Is there any chance we could get RV and racing.com to broadcast in HD?
Yes, we do, obviously via Foxtel,
Yep.
not via the free-to-air signal. There's a significant cost in doing that. So for the time being, that'll be limited via Foxtel.
Yep. Another SMS here. This is unusual. There's a lot of positive SMSs that are coming through. I'm enjoying what you're saying. Cost point. This is a good one. This has been a bane for a lot of punters that go to the track. I've said kudos to MRC and the VRC recently for reducing costs, special prices during the Spring Carnival and food as well. What's your viewpoint on what can be done?
Yeah, well, I'm a consumer like everyone else as well. And I think you've just touched then. The VRC and the MRC have acknowledged the challenges there. They're actively doing something about that. It's not just them. Across the country, racing network, there are things being done. There are days where there'll be some free offers, right? Southside are trialling some good offers there. So it's clearly been an issue. We've got to make it more attractive for people to return to the track again, and that's clearly a driver.
I want to finish with an exciting Southside initiative, but last SMS that I'll ask you, is there anything Racing Victoria can do to combat the rise in insurance costs? And interestingly, I had Jason Scott on a couple of weeks ago, the boss of Queensland Racing, and he said racing's biggest issue in the future is not wagering, it's insurance costs.
Yeah, it is an issue for the whole industry, as it is for many other industries. Different types of insurance. One thing we have done is work with trainers from a work cover perspective. We've introduced an increase in the levy to help fund some of the increase in work cover costs that trainers are facing, but it's also allowed us to invest in case management and support services to help them drive the costs of their business down and eliminate those risks, and also provide important support in the case of crisis outcomes and emergencies. That's working really, really well. The ATA are incredibly supportive of that, and we need to get more trainers on board. I don't think some trainers are even aware that exists, and they should be taking that opportunity up now. It's made a huge difference to several stables already, and we're really proud about how that's going. And then we'll look at other parts of the industry sector as well.
Aaron, speaking with Neil Bainbridge from Southside, who I think is one of the really good innovators and administrators in racing. It's now one of the biggest racing jurisdictions, the two tracks. And could we have a couple of exciting races towards the end of the Spring Carnival with $2 million slot races, one on Pakenham Cup Day and also one on Cranbourne Cup Day?
Yeah, well, they're going well, and he is a good administrator. He's also a very good salesman, clearly. But they're having a go, right? And I think that's a concept that they've put to us to consider. We're really supportive, right? I think the idea of being able to do something innovative that drives engagement and also potentially brings new money into the Victorian ecosystem is something that on face value you'd love to support. I know they've done a hell of a lot of work to progress that concept, and I think it's getting close to final stages, and we're looking forwards to catching up with them probably in a week's time or so to hear more about it. But, we're very positive towards it. Could
we get it up and running for this year's carnival?
We could. I think the amount of work that they've done, it's certainly possible, right? But there's obviously a couple of things that we still need to finalise before that can be definitive. But, again, we applaud their initiative and all the work they've done to engage not just their local constituents, but, people across Victoria. And what they're proposing won't just be limited to, the Southside jurisdiction. That'll be something that's open and available to any trainer syndicators.
Aaron, appreciate your time. You've got another important meeting to go to. Congratulations once again, and look forward to doing this more often. It's good to get you in regularly and have a chat about the state of play.
No, as do I, and thanks for having me on. Plenty to be positive about, and I'm looking forward to getting on with it.
Yep, well, the Spring Carnival is nice, so it is a good timing all round. Well done.
Good on you. Thanks.
Aaron Morrison, the new CEO of Racing Victoria.